Yeah, so let's demonstrate how you would use Font Awesome. So Font Awesome, what it does is that again, just like in Bootstrap, it declares all sorts of set of classes that you can then apply to your elements. Here we don't really want an element, right? We just want an icon to appear at a particular location, right? So for instance, the way it's typically done is that you use some generic element that doesn't have any display, that's not going to render on any of the page. For instance, the I element, or the B or the U, right? It only styles something that is contained inside, right? This one changes the text to be italic, right? But we don't really want the content, right? We don't really want the text. We just want to have a font display in place of this empty string, right? And so if we have that empty string, it's not being displayed, right? It's not being displayed, but we can now apply what font do we want to appear in that location. So we can say, class. Let's see if I remember a font here. Uh, First, it starts off with an FA, telling it, kind of reminding us that this font that we're using comes from Font Awesome. This is something like Bootstrap should have done, right? That it tags all its classes so that we know that these are classes that Bootstrap generated. Maybe because the abbreviation would have been BS. Maybe that's why they didn't go with that. But here's a Font Awesome. It's also a good practice if you're declaring your own styles, your own classes. You should always prepend it with something that we know that it belongs to you, right? Maybe your initials or something, right? I tend to use JGA. It's my initials, and then the name of the class I want to apply, right? If it's yours, you should follow the same naming convention. So anyway, I believe one that I remember is FA gear, right? And that applies a gear icon, right? Or there's a whole bunch of other ones. I think there's maybe OK. I think it's one. No, I guess not. Is it delete? Let me see. No. Remove. Okay, remove. So it adds this X, right? Obviously, you can peruse through those fonts by going to the actual library, the Font Awesome library, and you can search for fonts. You can say delete, right? And so it shows you a trash can, right? It shows you all sorts of icons that you can use. The dash, or the remove a person, user times, or the backspace, right? So anything that has to do with that kind of action, right? You have all these icons available to you. So just become familiar, right, with what's available, right? You don't have to memorize any of this. Just how you would use it. There's also some transformations that you can apply. For instance, if you want to make them bigger, I think it's FA 2x. I think. Yeah, so you can multiply and make it bigger. You can also spin. You can say FA spin. Adds a transformation so that it starts spinning, or you can rotate it a specific amount of time. So 45 degrees, 90 degrees, right? So you can have different operations. You can also put them on top of each other, right? So that you can combine multiple of these fonts, so that you can have like a circle background, right, with some X in front of it, or pencil, or all sorts of these things, right? So again, peruse through some of these libraries and see what's available, and just play around with it. Okay. Let's go back to see what we got so far. Let's see. So creating a split screen. The left-hand side modules. You have navigation pills on the left-hand side or right-hand side, or tabs to render different sections or different topics in the course. Then adding pills at the bottom, where you have topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. So use some of this that we're providing. Tables might be also very useful, but again, use them for tabular content, right? I mean, you could argue that the courses, instead of using the divs, the rows, and the columns, yes, that you could use tables instead, right? And I think there would be a legitimate use of tables. So for instance, in here, instead of in the course list, you're rendering it this way, you could argue that successfully, that instead a better representation would be using tables. And you have table rows, where you have table data, and here would be the course title, so webdev, right? And you would have multiple rows, and this would be DBMS, right? Now those tables look awful. Did I miss something here? TD, TR. Why are you not rendering? Oh, okay, in different rows. Very, very. You know, they look ugly, right? If you look at the border, if I say border equal 1, you know, they look really, really ugly. Instead, you can style them by using some of the Bootstrap styling. You can say class, this is a table. You know, it immediately looks much more professional. All right. You add some borders at the between the rows. Let's add a couple more here, and this becomes let's see, software dev, right? And you can style them, for instance, by adding stripes. Where are you? No, that's not it. Ah, where'd it go? Here we go. You can style it by striping them, right? You can add table, and then you can add striped, right? So that it highlights every other row. So for instance, this would be table striped, I think it is. No, maybe not. Is it 1P maybe? Not stripped. Oh, there we go. So now it highlights every other row, which is also a nice professional look, right? So yeah, so you know, you could argue that tables actually is a good way of styling this, right? Because indeed every column has the same information, right? You know, the first column has the title of the courses, the second title has the owners, the other one is when was the last modify, and the last one has, you know, action, deletes and edits and whatnot. Okay, right? So yeah, so that's great. So let's see if I missed something. So tables, you can style a particular row to be the active row. So it's highlighted. If you highlight it, if you select it, you can make it responsive. So responsive tables is very important. Let's take a look at that. If you have content that doesn't fit in the table, usually what we want to avoid is that content that doesn't fit, right? Somehow it should either be able to scale down, right? Or if you absolutely need scroll bars, well, you have to be careful, right? Because if this already is scrolling up and down, right? Especially on a phone where the content certainly is not going to fit, and you're going to have to scroll up and down. Yes, right? And typically the best practice is that it should only scroll up and down vertically. It should not necessarily scroll horizontally. All right, so it's a very bad experience, you know, having to force me to have to scroll left and right. Right, usually on a phone, you know, it's very natural to scroll up and down. But there are cases where yes, it makes sense that I need to scroll in every direction. You know, for instance, it might be an image that I want to pinch and zoom, or it might be a table that doesn't fit. Right, it just has way too many columns, and it makes no sense to use less columns. Yes, right. So in those particular edge cases, we might want to add you know, a scrollable scroll thumb here that you can scroll the table, only the table, not the entire content, right, but only the table. And to achieve that, what we could do is to wrap the entire table with a style called responsive, table dash responsive. What that will do is that if the table fits, it doesn't need any scroll bars, right? But if a table doesn't fit, right, it will automatically, right, add a scroll bar at the bottom, right? So you can scroll only the table, right? Everything else is not scrollable, which is exactly what we want. Instead, right, if you don't add the tables responsive, what will happen is that the table's too big to fit, right? And in small screens, it will add a scroll bar at the bottom that will allow you to scroll the entire page. We don't want that, all right? Make sure that you do not allow that. So table responsive, let's see, table strip. So table responsive. Okay. Now, right now, it doesn't have any other content here. It only has the first column. Let's add a couple more columns here. Let's just create lots and lots of content so it doesn't fit. So notice what it does, right? It adds the scroll bar at the bottom so that only the table is scrollable, right? Which is great. That's exactly what we want, right? If you don't add that, if you don't add table responsive, oops. Okay, notice that the entire page is scrollable. See that? So that's a bad experience, right? Forcing me to scroll the entire page just because the content doesn't fit, right? And we're going to be looking for these things, right? You're going to be the TAs and myself are going to be looking for these things. Are you forcing me to scroll? Only the content that should scroll, should have scroll bars. Okay. Let's see what else. Responsive tables, table demo. Okay, so for instance, the title, the owned by, the last modified, so renders like what you're asked to build, right? Make it responsive as well. Styling forms. For the forms, we played around with forms a little bit last week with doing the login and the registration. There are classes that are specific to forms. Certainly, I encourage you to take a look at Bootstrap on how to style them using Bootstrap. Let's see, Bootstrap. If you look for forms, okay, it'll give you just a plain old form. But these forms are responsive. Okay, so notice, let's look at the responsive form here for a second. Let's see. So a responsive form might render horizontally when it has enough space, like this one might put the labels on the left-hand side, right, and the controls on the right-hand side. But when the screen starts to become smaller, I don't know if they use this one. Let's make this smaller. Okay, not this one. They didn't do it for this one in particular. Oh, actually, they did. Okay, notice how it flips, right? Now the labels are now rendered vertically as opposed to horizontally. So to achieve that, they have already classes for you, right? That you can just readily copy and paste here. We have the outer form. We have the div that contains both the label on the left-hand side and the div and the input field on the right-hand side. Notice that they're using the column, right? Right. Basically, they're creating a small little row, right, and two columns, where the left-hand side column is only 2 units wide, and the right-hand side is 10 units wide. You can change that, right? Maybe you have labels that are too long, and maybe 2 is not enough. You could go with like 3 and 9, right, or 4 and 8, right? If you have labels that don't fit, and then you have your input fields, right? You have your input fields, your buttons and whatnot. Okay, so again, feel free to reuse this. And what's giving us here the responsiveness here is this form group. This form group is what is giving us the responsive behavior of flipping from rendering horizontally to rendering vertically. Okay. Let's see. Email. Okay. Oops. So Here's an example. I believe in one of the pages that you're asked to put a highlighted message at the top. I think in the profile, right? If you've updated something and give some feedback to the user. There's all sorts of help blocks. Also from these are classes declared by Bootstrap, and you can color them in different ways. You can color them red, green, blue, or whatever, depending on whether it's an error, whether it's just a feedback, right? If it's something positive, you might use green. If it's something went wrong where you were not able to save the information, you might render it as red, right? So take a look at those as well. Let's see. You can look at alerts. Alerts can be rendered as green, blue, red, right? So some simple coloring schemes. The Bootstrap, you'll see that they use a lot of these names, right? These canonical names like primary, secondary, success, danger, warning, info. They'll use them all over their style sheets, right? And they are semantic names that are typically associated with some color scheme, right? For instance, danger is typically always rendered as red, right? And success typically is rendered always as green, the color of money. So they have these semantic names that they color. They also, you can apply them to your buttons. You can apply them to text, to all sorts of things, right? And the same color scheme fits, and it fits all, and it's consistent all throughout your application if you stick to these naming conventions. Okay. Checkboxes, inline forms. Although you can style forms, we're going to, only for this one assignment, right? But later on, we're going to abandon forms, right? We're going to instead use JavaScript to handle forms. But for this first assignment, go ahead and you can still use forms, responsive forms. So take a look at those. Buttons, we're also going to be using quite a bit of buttons as well. And again, the names, the naming convention, as well as their primary, success, info, warning, it will highlight, it will render your button a specific color scheme, based on on those names. You can change the sizes of the button, whether they're large, small, or extra small, or you can disable the buttons. Here's an example on using forms to be rendered either horizontally or vertically that you can use also for your assignment. There's also these elements, these classes that allow you to decide whether something's going to show or hide, right? And other hide so that you can style them so that they're initially hidden, so that later on, perhaps programmatically, you can decide to show something, like an alert, right? The alert box, the content is already there, right? And maybe you have a list of different messages that you can display the user, yes? But they're not all applicable just now, right? So they might be all hidden, and then programmatically you can decide to show the message or not. Maybe also under each one of the input fields, you might have messages, right? Whether it might be an alert message saying, that username is already taken, or that password is not what expected, or you might have all these different messages which would be initially hidden, right? But then use JavaScript to programmatically show them, right, whenever they're appropriate. So these stylings are also very, very useful. These other stylings of hiding and showing are actually useful to hide or show depending on the size of the screen, right? It could be that if you're using tables specifically, especially, you might have, on a big screen, you might be showing 6 columns, yes? And as it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, right, you might start hiding some of those columns, yes? Right, and say, well, when I have enough screen, I show the name of the title of the course and who owns it and it was the last time that it was accessed and how many likes it has and blah blah blah, and then the action column on the right hand side, right? And you can use these DM block to hide and show depending on the size, right? So for instance, and you can say, well, only show it or only hide it, right, in these sizes. So as it becomes smaller, you might drop the last, the column that shows the last time that was the axis, and then you might drop the owner, and then you might drop certain columns so that at the end, on a really, really tiny screens, you might show just one column, right? That maybe the title of the course and maybe the action column. That's it, right? And you're hiding all the other ones. So that allows you to do that as well. Expand or hide in different screens. So here's an example where we're applying two column classes, right, on the same element, right? And what this does here is that on a big screen, I want you to take up the entire width, column 12. Yes. As you become smaller, I want you to shrink and say, no, I only wanted you to take up only 10 of them, right? And so on and so forth, right? So you can apply multiple of these transformations that are applicable as you change the size of the screens. Very, very cool. Anyway, let's leave it here.
Hi everyone, Jose here. Please remember to subscribe and like the video. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. Thank you.